For 14 years, every single Sunday, I came here and lied to the whole world. And the strangest part, I'd do it again, every single time. People around here think I'm just a heartbroken old widow who can't let go. They see a frail, 81-year-old woman talking to a cold piece of stone, and they feel sorry for me. They bring me casseroles. They pat my hand at church. They whisper, "Poor Helen." But what nobody in this town ever knew was that I was never mourning at all. My name is Helen Carter, and before I tell you what happened that cold evening in the cemetery, you need to understand who Richard was to me first, because without that, none of this makes any sense. Richard Carter was not a complicated man on the surface. He drove a beat-up Ford pickup, took his coffee black, and every Friday night without fail, he'd bring home a single grocery bag with the same things: a loaf of sourdough from the bakery on Pike Street, a block of sharp cheddar, and one candy bar. Always the same one: Snickers. He said life was simple if you let it be. We met in 1971 at a community dance down in Tacoma. He stepped on my feet twice and apologized so sincerely both times that I fell in love with him right there on that gymnasium floor. We were married 11 months later. We built a quiet life, a good life, 2 kids, our son David and our daughter Patrice. A little house on Willamere Drive with a green front door that I painted myself because Richard said he was too tall to crouch down and do it right. Folks around here called us boring, and I took that as a compliment. But something changed in the spring of 2008. Richard had been working as a mid-level financial analyst at a regional consultant firm downtown. Boring work, boring meetings, boring lunches. He always said the most exciting thing that happened at his office was when someone brought in a birthday cake. Then one March evening, he came home, and he didn't bring the Friday bag. He sat down at the kitchen table without taking off his coat. And Richard never did that. He was particular about things like that. I asked him what was wrong, and he looked at me. And I had a strange feeling in my gut right then, the kind you get when your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. And he said, "Helen, I think I've seen something I wasn't supposed to see." I sat down across from him, and he told me. For 3 years, Richard had been quietly auditing internal accounts for a company that turned out to be a front, laundering money for a network of corrupt county officials and at least 2 men connected to state government. He'd stumbled onto it by accident, following a number discrepancy so small most people would have ignored it. But Richard was particular. He always followed the thread. He had documented everything: spreadsheets, printed records, a flash drive hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of John Steinbeck's East of Eden on our living room bookshelf. He'd already made contact with a federal investigator named Agent Marlowe, a woman out of the Seattle field office. He was supposed to testify the following Tuesday. That was on a Thursday. By the following Saturday night, my husband was supposed to be dead. The call came at 11:43 at night. I remember because I'd been watching the clock since 9, waiting for Richard to come home from what he told me was one last meeting with Agent Marlowe. The sheriff's deputy who knocked on my door had kind eyes and a wet hat. He told me there had been an accident on Route 9, that a vehicle registered in Richard's name had gone off the embankment near the Cedar River Bridge. He told me they'd recovered a body. I didn't cry. I remember that surprised the deputy. I just stood there in my doorway in my bathrobe and I said, "Can I call my daughter?" And he said yes. And I closed the door and I dialed Patrice. And the moment she answered, I said 4 words I'd never said to anyone before in my life. Do exactly as planned. See? What the deputy didn't know, what the hospital didn't know, what David and everyone else in our neighborhood didn't know, was that this moment had been planned, not by me at first, by Richard, and then by the 2 of us together, over 4 terrifying days in that kitchen on Willowmere Drive. When Richard told me what he'd found, when he explained the names, the reach, the power of the people involved, we both understood something very quickly. Agent Marlowe had warned him. She'd said the case was compromised, that someone on the inside had leaked his identity to the people he was testifying against, that there were men who would not let Richard walk into that courtroom alive. The plan was Richard's idea. I thought it was crazy. I told him that. I said, "Richard Eugene Carter, you have lost your mind." But the next morning, he drove me to a spot off Route 9 and showed me the embankment. He'd already scouted it, already talked to someone, a man I will only call Thomas, who owed Richard a debt so enormous he would do almost anything to repay it. Thomas had been in a terrible situation years before, a gambling debt, wrong people, real danger. Richard had quietly helped him restructure his finances and get out. Thomas had disappeared into a quieter life up in Snohomish County and always said Richard had saved him. Now Richard was calling in that favor. The plan was this: Thomas would obtain a body through legal channels that I still don't fully understand and don't ask me to explain. A man who had died with no family, no identification, no one waiting for him. The car accident would be staged, and I would be the one to identify the body. I've asked myself 1,000 times since then whether I'm a good person, whether what I did was wrong. But when you love someone the way I loved Richard, and when you know with absolute certainty that the alternative is a coffin with him actually in it, you'd be surprised what your hands are capable of signing. Richard left Seattle the night before the accident. I don't know exactly where he went, and that was by design. Agent Marlowe helped facilitate his exit, off the books, her own risk, because she believed in what he was doing and she felt responsible for the leak that endangered him. She told me once, years later in a brief phone call, that Richard was the bravest ordinary man she'd ever met. Our son David believed the story completely. He grieved hard and real, and I held him and I cried with him, and God forgive me, those tears were real too, because even though Richard was alive somewhere, I had still lost him. We could not contact each other. No letters, no calls, nothing that could be traced. We had agreed Patrice knew, only Patrice. My daughter carried that secret with me, and it aged her in ways I can still see in her face every time I look at her. And every Sunday for 14 years I came here, not to mourn, but to perform, to be the grieving widow so completely, so consistently, that no one would ever question the grave. Because if they stopped questioning it, Richard stayed safe. It was a Sunday in November, the kind of cold that gets into your coat no matter how thick it is, when I heard the footsteps behind me. I didn't think much of it at first. People visit graves. That's what cemeteries are for. But then the footsteps stopped, and then I heard my name. He was maybe 45, dark hair going gray at the sides. He had the kind of face that seen too much and decided to keep going anyway. He stood there about 20 feet away, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not threatening, but not comfortable either. I looked at him the way any 81-year-old woman looks at a stranger who calls her by name in an empty cemetery, with every bit of patience I had left. "Can I help you?" I said. He stepped closer, reached into his badge, and pulled out an envelope. Old, yellowed at the edges, still sealed with red wax. He held it out to me without a word. I recognized the wax seal immediately. Richard used to have a brass stamp, an old family thing, his grandfather's initials. He'd sealed our wedding invitations with it. I hadn't seen that seal in 14 years. My hand started shaking before I even opened it. The first line read, "If you're reading this, it means someone finally found the truth I tried to bury." I stopped reading. I looked up at the man. He introduced himself then, Marcus Bell. Said he was an investigative journalist who'd spent 3 years working on a story about a decades-old corruption ring in the Pacific Northwest. Said he'd found Richard's name buried in sealed court documents that had just been partially declassified. He told me the case had never been fully closed, that the people Richard was going to testify against had mostly protected themselves with new money and new lawyers. But one of them, the main one, had recently died, and a lawyer cleaning out his estate had found documents that pointed back to 2010, to Richard, to a witness who disappeared the night before he was supposed to testify. Marcus Bell had tracked the accident report, tracked the death certificate, tracked the identification paperwork filed at Swedish Medical Center on the night of the accident. And then he said the thing that made my face go pale. Even though, Lord help me, it shouldn't have. I knew it was coming eventually. I always knew. He said, "The strange part, Mrs. Carter, is that the only person who signed the final identification report was you." He was kind about it. He said he assumed it had been a mistake. Grief does terrible things to memory, to judgment. He said he wasn't there to accuse anyone of anything. He just wanted the truth about what happened to Richard Carter, because he believed Richard had tried to do the right thing and deserved to have that acknowledged. He looked at me with those careful eyes, and he waited, and I looked at the grave, that grave I had stood beside 537 times by my count, and I made a decision, not the decision he expected. I said, "I know." He blinked, said, "I'm sorry," and I said it again, clearly, calmly, the way you say something you've been rehearsing for 14 years because you always knew this conversation was coming. "I know, because Richard didn't die in that accident. I helped him disappear." He stood there like I'd pulled the ground out from under him, and I understood that feeling. I remembered it from the night Richard first told me what he'd found, that sensation of the world rearranging itself into a shape you don't recognize. I told him to sit down. There's a stone bench near the east wall of the cemetery. I've sat on it many times myself when my knees needed a rest. We walked there together, this journalist and this old woman, and I told him the truth, all of it. I told him about the documents, about Agent Marlowe, about Thomas and the arrangement, and the night I stood in that hospital corridor and signed my name to a lie so my husband could stay alive. I told him about the 14 years of Sundays. about David, my son, who still believes his father is buried in this ground and who comes himself twice a year, on Richard's birthday and on Father's Day, and leaves a bottle of Richard's favorite ginger ale because that was their thing, the two of them. About Patrice, who carries this the way only a daughter who loves her mother will carry an impossible thing, quietly, completely, without complaint. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he asked the question I knew he'd ask. He said, "Is Richard still alive?" I said, "That's the one thing I won't answer. And I think if you're the kind of journalist you say you are, you'll understand why." He sat with that. To his credit, he nodded. Then he asked something I didn't expect. He said, "Does it help, coming here, when he isn't actually—" He gestured at the grave. And I thought about that question more honestly than I've thought about anything in years. I said, "The man under that stone was a real man. He had no one, no family to visit him, no name anyone remembered. And because of him, because of Thomas finding him, and because of what he unknowingly gave us, my husband is alive somewhere in this world. So yes, it helps. Coming here isn't about pretending Richard is buried here. It's about honoring the man who is, and making sure the story holds long enough to keep Richard safe for whatever time he has left." He didn't speak for almost 2 minutes. I counted. Old habit. Then he said, "Mrs. Carter, if I write this story—" I stopped him right there. I said, "Mr. Bell, you came here looking for a story about a corrupt system and a brave man who tried to fight it. That story is true. Richard found the evidence. Richard risked everything. You can tell that story. But the part about whether he's alive or where he is, that part stays buried. Not for my sake. I'm 81 years old. I'm not afraid of consequences anymore. But if there are people still connected to those men who would want to finish what they started in 2010, I won't hand them a map. Not for a headline. Not for anything." He stood up and he looked at me for a long moment in that fading November light. And then he said something I didn't expect from a journalist. He said, "I won't print what you don't want printed. I give you my word." I've known a lot of people in 81 years. I've gotten reasonably good at knowing when someone means what they say. I believed him. We shook hands right there by that stone bench, and then I walked back to Richard's grave, or the grave, the one with Richard's name on it. I smoothed the lilies one more time. I talk to him every week, still, even knowing what I know, even knowing he's not there. Because wherever Richard is, and I don't know the town, I don't know the name he uses now, I don't know what he looks like after 14 years and whatever life has done to him. He is alive. His heart is beating. He's watching some version of a Sunday morning somewhere. And I like to think that somehow, in whatever quiet way the universe allows, he knows I'm still here, still holding the story together, still bringing the white lilies. People think love is about being together, about the same roof and the same coffee pot and the same side of the bed. And maybe it is, when you're lucky enough to have all of that. But I learned something else. I learned that love, at its most serious, love when it counts, is about what you're willing to carry alone, so the person you love doesn't have to carry it at all. I carried this for 14 years, and I would carry it for 14 more. The man under that stone saved my husband's life, and I made a promise to that stranger, whoever he was, wherever he came from, whatever roads brought him to that night on Route 9, that the truth will stay buried with him, that he will not be disturbed, that he will be visited, that he will have white lilies, and that is a promise I have never once broken. At 81 years old, I've lost a lot of things. My knees aren't what they were. My hair went white in my 60s. I lost friends. I lost my mother and my father. I lost the green front door on Willamere Drive when I finally sold that house because I couldn't keep up the yard alone. But I never lost the one thing that mattered most. And I'll tell you something I want you to really hear, whoever you are, wherever you're watching this from. People will tell you that secrets destroy you, that you can't carry a lie without it eating you alive. Maybe that's true for most secrets. Maybe that's true for secrets born out of selfishness or cruelty or greed. But some secrets are born out of love so fierce it has no other shape. Some secrets are the only roof between the person you love and a storm that would kill them. I don't regret a single Sunday. I don't regret a single lily. I don't regret signing that paper in that hospital corridor on the worst night of my life. Because somewhere tonight, my husband is alive, and that is enough. That has always been enough. If Helen's story moved you, if it made you think about love, sacrifice, and what we carry for the people we can't live without, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who still believes that real love shows up even when no one is watching. It means more than you know. And if you want to hear another story about family, about secrets kept too long, and about the moment one woman finally chose herself after 60 years of choosing everyone else, click the video on your screen right now. I promise you won't want to look away.